picking your grad school location is super important. I don't think enough people consider it. Like when I picked my grad
Mhm.
school, it was just a fluke. I ended up in Dallas and I did not think about going straight into freelancing from graduate school, which is
Mhm.
what most of us do.
Right.
And if you're in the middle of like Kansas or something,
Yeah, I still am so grateful for the connections I made in doing my master's degree in Cincinnati. I'm still connected, but the connections are more than friendships. They're my network. That's how I launched my career. So often you get counseling when you're picking a graduate school about your teacher. Well, of course, your teacher,
right?
but it's really important to poise yourself in a location where you can start working in an area that has regional orchestras.
Mhm.
So many cities have satellite towns with regionals, with professional paying jobs, that I think it is really worth your time and effort to research the location of your grad school, not just your
Yeah.
teacher.
Or at least being somewhat near a major metropolitan area where there's going to be work, and then a major enough metropolitan area where there's going to be suburbs with regional orchestras around it. And like,
Exactly,
yeah,
like
totally.
options. I know that the cities in like South Dakota, there are symphonies, but they're not necessarily surrounded by suburbs with that have the professional orchestras, and
Right.
there's a dearth of opportunities there, and that's where you get your it's your training ground when
Yep.
you first get out of school.
Yeah. Like Chicago, where we both
Oh
uh,
yeah, that was awesome.
freelance, like it has a never ending supply of freelancers because
It
it's got
really does.
Northwestern
Hmm.
and DePaul and then whatever, Illinois, University of Illinois, I assume. But like
Hmm.
Northwestern and DePaul, all the almost all the freelancers I was around, they stayed from going to school at Northwestern
Hmm.
or DePaul.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
they end up subbing in the CSO or just getting in the Chicago scene. And then the all
Right.
regional orchestras. There's got to be like 40 or 50 regional orchestras in the greater, like
Oh
going
yeah,
north and into Indiana and
easily.
stuff. Like such a great location.
So when I was in Chicago, I was not there from a school connection. That was sort of a let's go freelance in a big city. The beauty of a town like that is there's enough work where the ladder of freelancers enables us to substitute for somebody up here because they get a bigger gig. There's enough
Right.
jobs out there where if the people above you get a job, you want to be that sub for them. And that happens. Now, in smaller cities, there isn't enough work where the people who are enthroned
Right.
in their positions are going to take anything better because they may not necessarily be anything. So there's no
Right.
ladder.
Right. Here in Hawaii, where I am, if the symphony needs a sub, I mean, if it's a pop show or something, there's a few people that could get by and not by mainland standards, but like just barely get by here. But they have
Okay.
to call people in from San Diego, or in fact, there's a flute
Hmm.
player here from San Diego for the year. So there's no ladder. Those symphony players, if there are any gigs, which there's not really, but they would take those. I've talked to a few students. I gave a talk in somewhere in Wisconsin,
Hmm.
Whitewater,
Oh yeah.
about freelancing.
Hmm.
And one of the topics was that I mentioned was location. I've had this talk a few times at different colleges and they sort of like wander off like location, whatever. But it's the most essential thing because a lot of those kids there, I mean, they're music majors in Whitewater, Wisconsin, and most of them are from somewhere rural
Hmm.
Wisconsin or
Okay.
nearby. So they're not really seeking to move. I don't think they have any
Hmm.
idea that if you're gonna be a musician, you're probably gonna be a freelancer and you got to get out of here. I mean, like maybe move back down to Milwaukee.
There's stuff around there.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
medicine, of
Right.
course.
Or a better example is like I gave this talk to here in Hawaii, University of Hawaii,
Okay.
music students, and I was talking about various aspects of freelancing and in my talking, I somehow mentioned like, oh, I'm not really freelancing that much anymore, which was that's another story, but I moved to Hawaii kind of like semi-retired with the symphony and stuff, but I knew like it's not going to be like Chicago, so there's no freelancing. Anyway, I mentioned in passing, like, well, I don't really freelance that much anymore, but blah, blah, blah. And this one
Hmm.
kid, like, super suspicious, is like, why aren't you freelancing much anymore?
Hmm.
And this is right after I talked about how important location is. Said, well, because I live here now. And literally, he looked
Oh,
up and he was like, oh. And these kids
wow. Yeah.
also, they have no desire. I mean, a lot of them are from Hawaii. Like you live in Hawaii, there's no desire to leave. Like, why would you? I understand. But like if
But
you
what are their expectations though? Like
that's
when they go,
exactly, I guess, maybe what I'm trying to get at, or I'm
yeah.
trying to get to them. Like, do you understand if you're a music major, what are you going to do with that? You got to move, like
Hmm.
there's nothing here.
Yeah. And getting
Um,
into that graduate school in the right town
yep.
is critical. Oh my goodness. When I
Yeah. So
graduated
important.
Cincinnati, there were so many, the satellite of all the regionals,
Yeah.
and so
I was
grateful.
in Dallas area
Hmm. Hmm.
graduate school, and
Yeah.
I got my first regional orchestra job in that area,
Yeah. That's
Irving
awesome.
Symphony. And there was a whole bunch of regionals. There's Fort
Yeah.
Worth. Well, that has a full-time orchestra, I think. But Fort Worth,
Hmm. Hmm.
Dallas, Houston's kind of far away. But I mean, there's tons of regionals. I just didn't care for Texas. So I moved, but
Hmm.
I could have stayed and freelanced.
Yeah. I really feel like I got my freelancing chops in Cincinnati. Like I spent, gosh, after grad
Yeah.
school, I think I was there for about 5 more years or so. And I just worked my tail off and I learned so much those years. It was really pivotal. I mean, all the driving,
Yeah.
but also all the orchestras I got connected to and all the people I met. I mean, even in the cities I've been living in since then, I keep running into people I know from them, and we can give each other recommendations. They can
Yeah.
recommend me. They know me. They know my playing. They know I'm responsible. Blah blah blah. And these are the people, graduate school people are the people who were my foundation of my career, my
Right.
freelancing,
Mhm.
and they can vouch for you.
Yeah, and in the regionals, also regional orchestras, we keep kind of coming back to. It's also known as the freelancers orchestra.
I think it's worth mentioning that regional orchestras right now are quite competitive. Oftentimes, the orchestras are maybe they had a history of being amateur, maybe like 25, 30 years ago,
Yep.
like Elgin
Yep.
and Butler
Exactly.
in Butler, Pennsylvania. And what I understand is that over time, these orchestras they started filling out their sections with pros, and then the pros got wind of it, the ones who were still struggling to get jobs here and there and whatever, and sort of muscled their way into these orchestras because we're getting paid to play in an orchestra. Community gets very used to a higher level of playing, and more pros come in, and then next thing you know they're auditioning, and it's not like shooting fish in a barrel anymore. And
Right.
now you're
Right.
getting an orchestra that is professional. So if anyone sees an orchestra in a smaller town and they're having auditions, I would not poo-poo it.
Yeah.
These groups are up and coming, because there are so many of us. There
Hmm.
are so many freelancers who are so skilled and trained. These orchestras can be picky now.
Yeah.
They don't just take anybody.
Often in the regionals, there's a contractor that's just embedded within the violin section
Mm-hmm.
or the trumpets, or like there's
Oh
a
yeah.
principal trumpet in Elgin Symphony. I don't know if he still is, but he was a big contractor. And so if you're subbing in a regional or a member, you're being observed. Like, there's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
contractor that contracts for other things within there because they're
Right.
professional musicians also.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll notice you like, oh, I'm going to add
Mm-hmm.
him to the roster, or I'm
They
going to
will.
my
It's so
list.
true. Yep.
That was how I really got started in Chicago, is I got Elgin Symphony, and
Mm-hmm.
from there just radiated out because you're connected to like people that sub in the CSO, Chicago Symphony,
Mm-hmm.
and Lyric, and they're playing
Yeah.
all the top things. And there are a
Right.
couple of different contractors were within that orchestra, and all the people that are in that orchestra also play in like five other regionals, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's such a network, a web of
Mm-hmm.
connections. No one gig is its own isolated island,
Mm-hmm.
everything is
Mm-hmm.
connected.
If you guys are enjoying this, we're enjoying it. Please like, share all the things, and we're going to be back with the next step.
And always with our interjecting our personal experiences, like
Yep.
we'll always try to do
Yeah.
that. I think those are interesting. Thanks for watching this video.
Yes. Thanks for joining us again.
See you at the next one.